All right, welcome to Jedbanger's Ball. I'm your host, Jed. Of course, it wouldn't be Jedbanger's Ball without Jed. It'd be Banger's Ball. Something like that. Today on the show, we have Justin Gage, mastermind behind the world-famous music blog, Aquarium Drunkard. He's also a music supervisor. He also has his own show on Sirius XM Radio. Check it out. I believe it's Channel 35. We'll look into that. I'll have my producer look into that. And he also runs the record label Autumn Tone, home to bands The Orwells, Twin Peaks, Josh Tillman. Before he was Father John Misty, he was Josh Tillman. And then he was a Symbol, and then he was a... No, that's Prince. Anyways, Justin Gage is on the show today. We're happy to have him here, and we're happy to have you listening. See you later. So my fucking morning was, the first thing I got this morning was a tweet that our new video for our 7-inch had been posted up on Noisy. Yet, even though I hadn't made the video live on YouTube, and that they had assured us that it was going to be posted next week.
Okay.
So then I got to run around all morning long on email and on the phone with the label guy, trying to figure out who to talk to get them to take it down, because the guy who had written the piece was in Australia, so now it's 2 a.m. there.
Okay.
And trying to get him to take something off the internet that's now going out to a bunch of people, even though you can't actually physically find it.
Okay, so the video is private right now. It's not live. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Have you ever... You've been doing this for 10 years now,
Yeah.
as a blog, as a music blog.
Right.
I mean, what's it like? I mean, been like for 10 years? You're celebrating 10 years now. I mean, how does this come about? Like, how did you start this blog?
Well, yeah, this is 2005, which in internet years is, I don't know, 80? Is it like dog years?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, today it felt like a million years.
Right.
I felt like I was dying a million deaths.
Yeah.
I think at one point I texted him and was like, "Dude, I'm gonna have a heart attack," and then realizing later that like I'm gonna have a heart attack over a YouTube video.
The internet. Yeah, no, it's 10 years, but it started out just, a whim. And, in 2005, blogs weren't even really a thing yet. Political blogs were kind of big, but as far as like a music blog, there weren't that many.
Right.
So, yeah, when AD started, there were, I don't know, man, I could probably list like 10, and that was it. So I think I definitely benefited from that because there just weren't that many out there.
And Aquarium Drunkard, where did the name come from for that?
The name was totally random, too. Someone had sent me a CDR. Like, this is before, really massive file sharing or anything.
Right.
Obviously, there was Napster and all that, but somebody had sent me a CDR, and it was demo versions of that Wilco record, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. And I had it playing on the stereo. And I thought, I'll set up this blog just to keep in touch with friends that moved around the country or around the globe instead of doing big email chains. So I was setting it up, and it was Blogspot.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, owned by Google now, I think. But, it asked, what do you want to call this thing? And I had these demos in the background, and Jeff Tweedy sang that line about an American aquarium drinker. So it was literally, I heard that, and I just typed in aquariumdrunkard.blogspot, and, that was it. And, obviously people then thought I was some kind of Wilco obsessive or something.
Right, it's like became a Wilco fan page.
Yeah, and, I do like that band, but, I started getting really strange emails from true Wilco obsessives. But yes, the name was a total fluke.
So it goes up there, and what are you thinking at that point? You're thinking just like, I'm going to just post music that I like, when I like it, when I have time.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to really dig deep down in the archives, it was random. Like I was posting like my favorite like gumbo recipes and weird dive bars in LA that I would find. It was just shit that I was into. But it gradually just became music, and I found some other kind of like-minded music weirdos doing blogs and decided that would be the sole focus of it. But yeah, it's always just been, whatever I'm particularly listening to at the time.
Were you worried at all about like posting up some music for download that wasn't maybe approved? Or because I remember at that time when I started first looking at music blogs, I was looking at like all these like obscure 70s, 60s psych rock kind of blogs, like Crisco's Rock. There was a thing called Crotch Bat. These were all blog spots. And what they were people putting up rips of like vinyl usually.
Right.
Or whatever, and you could download them, and then you could have access to all this like super rare vinyl.
Sure.
Or in digital form. But, they're also doing it, I guess, illegally in theory.
Yeah, and most of that stuff, had been out of print for years.
Sure.
So it was kind of like this nebulous territory of, sure, they don't own the copyright, but this stuff had been out of print. There was nowhere to hear it. A lot of this stuff had never been on CD.
Exactly.
But we've never been, I guess back then you would call that a full album download blog.
I used to just type in the name of a band.
Right.
And like full album and Blogspot.
Right.
And I could find the file.
Yeah.
And then you could sign up for something where you could download multiple files at once. And I would be working at my desk job with like 30 albums downloading at once.
Right. Over their network, which is probably 10 times faster than the network you get at home back then.
Yeah, and also just like of shit that nobody cared about,
right.
Like. So that's what I'm wondering, like, were you worried about that, or were you thinking about that, or was that even?
Back then, we were never posting full albums, and most of the stuff that I was posting was, like you said, pretty obscure, and it would only be, a couple of tracks. We weren't posting the Beatles or anything.
Sure.
So I can probably count on two hands the amount of times people have actually hit me up, like, hey, can you please take this down? The one that really comes to mind is I found this, and this is probably 8 years ago. I found it was a bootleg. It was called the Lost Gaucho Tapes. So it was Steely Dan's last albums, and this was a bunch of alternate versions and/or tracks that never made the studio album. And they didn't leave a lot on the floor. So when I found this, I was just it was like Mecca.
Someone sent this to you, or?
Somebody sent this to me.
Right.
I used to get readers that would send me packages in the mail of, records of, strange origin or live stuff or whatever. And somebody had sent a CDR of this to me. And I listened to it over and over, and I did a feature on it, and I had a link to this. And it wasn't hosted by Aquarium Drunkard, but it was a place where you could find it. And the label attorneys did hit me up, and that's, where did you find this? We need a copy of this. Please decide to send the CDR. And, I was hoping maybe they would actually release that in some sort of, official capacity.
Right.
But not yet. But I did see the Dan last week here in LA.
I think I saw you seeing the Dan on Instagram.
Yeah.
And then
never miss it.
Brian McPherson tweeted that our friend Brian McPherson tweeted that Steely Dan was his Grateful Dead.
What are your thoughts on the Dan? Because it seems like people either absolutely love them, like me, or they despise them.
Well, I tweeted back to him that Ween was my Grateful Dead.
I like that.
And then he said that Wire was his Ween. And then by that point, I was pretty stoned, and I was like, I don't even know what this means anymore. Like
all hail Boognish.
What's my thought on Steely Dan?
Yeah.
I love Steely Dan. But I'm not a completist with any bands, really.
Right.
I like what I like. And I like Steely Dan in that I like Pretzel Logic. Mm-hmm. I like, probably if I was going to put on a Steely Dan thing, I'd probably put on like Can't Buy a Thrill or some sort of collection.
Right.
As opposed to like really just sitting there.
Single LP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not. I'm like kind of a greatest hits guy when it comes
Right.
with Steely Dan.
I have always thought they were just so, I don't know, kind of misunderstood by the masses. Like, people think it's just this yacht rock, but then you listen to, like, Fagen's lyric and Rye Deliver, and you're like, this is a twisted fuck, you know? It's just...
Well, they're fascinating to me as far as the story of the band, and like when I read about, they're a band that I like to read about,
Right.
And they're a band I love to listen to too. But I do like the story of them, and I like that they wrote. I don't know if they did this for sure, but did you see that letter they wrote to Luke Wilson about how pissed off they were at Owen Wilson,
Right.
for ripping off their idea,
movie, yeah,
You, Me, and Dupree.
Right.
I love that. I love reading like the stories about them, like recording records and things like that, and just what weird personalities they were, and that they stopped touring, and
Perfectionist.
they're perfectionists, and they're very honest with themselves as far as like they're not going to go out and give you a shitty show if they think it's going to be crappy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Like this, I've seen them.
I've never seen them
6 or 7 times because as you mentioned, they just didn't tour forever.
Right.
And I was talking to a friend of mine. I think seeing them at the Bowl last week was the best time I'd ever seen them.
Right.
Which is saying something. I mean, these guys are...
What other band could you say that about?
5 decades into their career or whatever it is.
Sure.
So,
I mean, you go and see anybody like that now, and you're just kind of happy to see them.
sure. It's
You go in
diminishing returns.
You go in with low expectations.
Right.
So to say that you saw Steely Dan recently and it was the best show you've ever seen of them is pretty incredible.
That's high praise.
If you go back and look at them on like Burt Sugarman's Midnight Special, though, that shit's pretty fucking killer.
Yeah, it's great.
They look amazing.
Yeah.
They got a good look.
Yeah.
What I like about them, and they just rip.
I'll say this: not the most attractive band.
No, that's what I mean. They have a great look.
Yeah, they were just a bunch of freaks.
They're not the most unattractive band.
True.
That award goes to what's that band called? Oh, Atlanta Rhythm.
The Atlanta Rhythm section.
Atlanta Rhythm section is the most unattractive band. They have a bass player named Paul Goddard, who is known as the Blob.
Jesus.
And if you Google image search Paul Goddard of Atlanta Rhythm section, you'll know what we're talking about. I actually learned that on WFMU one time. They were talking about they had a call-in contest to see what the most unattractive band was, and I think it came down to either Kiss without makeup.
Oh, that's a good one.
Or Atlanta Rhythm section won because of Paul Goddard himself swung the competition.
What was their hit? Was it Champagne Jam? Something like that?
Champagne Jam. Yeah, I think
just a great title.
I went out and bought an Atlanta Rhythm section record just so I could have a photo of Paul Goddard on the back of it. He looks sort of like a mixture of Rocky Dennis in The Mask and Tiny Tim.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So he must be an amazing bass player.
Yeah, he's got to be.
Because I think even back then it was more important about like, you see these ads. These ads only exist in L.A. really, but if you look at the like Craigslist wanted musician ads, I think most places, if you go to like a Seattle or a Portland, it's kind of like, hey, this is what kind of music we like.
Right.
Why don't you come down and jam? And in L.A. it's like 18 to 21, under 150 pounds, pro gear, pro attitude, right. It's very specific, So like Paul Goddard probably would have a really hard time being in a band in LA right now.
And that's why he was from the Dirty South.
Exactly, yeah. So where were we?
I think we were talking about Ween. I don't know.
What do you think about Ween? Because I could talk about Ween as well.
Oh, God, I love Ween. All right, favorite Ween record, go.
I guess record, shit. I mean, I guess The Pod, because
it's mine too.
Yeah, but I think that Pure Guava was kind of the one that I heard first.
The gateway.
Yeah, and that one was like the first one I heard, but The Pod was the first one I heard stoned.
Yep.
And I think that's why. And the songs on The Pod that rock, like Dr. Rock, when you hear them played live, faster and heavier, it's like it's like more in line with what I like, which is
Right.
like heavy metal and punk rock music and stuff like that, than
And I love the fact that people, again, will think they're a joke band or something. Then you see them live, and you're like, no.
I've seen them live a lot of times, and I saw them live 2 times in a row in 2 nights, and they played, each concert was 5 hours long, and I left at like hour 4
Right.
both nights while the drummer was doing an incredible version of Hot for Teacher.
Amazing. Amazing.
And the other thing, and they had the keyboard player from like Earth, Wind, and Fire as their keyboard, like a much older guy
Right.
in the band. And also the bass player had this shirt that was like, he was a really skinny guy, triple XL shirt, orange, with like, it looked like a homemade
Moo-moo?
a homemade moo-moo with the screen print of just like a dog's face on it. Like some morbidly obese woman had made of her own dog.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like it.
So
I listened to Chocolate and Cheese last week.
yeah, I mean, I like all the Ween stuff pretty much. And I do like that, that song, oh man, some of that stuff that they released like in between like labels or whatever around the time of that White Pepper stuff was really weird too. They were just like, and that commercial they did for Pizza Hut,
Yeah.
where he's just like, "Where's the motherfucking cheese at?"
Where's the motherfucking cheese at?
So, Aquarium Drunkard.
Yes.
So, at what point did you, winding back here,
Right.
At what point did you decide, like, or did you know that, like, okay, now I got to keep fucking updating this fucking thing because I can't just, like, put gumbo recipes up there whenever I feel like it,
Honestly, it was almost like this obsessive compulsive thing. Like I was just doing it non-stop. And I loved it. But it was really just, it was like...
You write all the entries, right?
No, well, back then I did.
Yeah.
But at the 2008, I brought on Josh Neese, who was the first contributor besides myself. But from 2005 until then, it was all me. And it was almost kind of like this just... I don't know. It was almost like I was just vomiting this content.
And you're just putting up there like what you were listening to at the time and enjoying and thinking like, wow, this is what I like. I might as well just share it.
Yeah, that or, I was just going through my own records and I don't know, live shows or whatever. I'd collected over the past 30 years and I don't know, just writing about, that stuff.
Were you trading like tapes and stuff of live shows and stuff like that with people?
Yeah, I loved the Grateful Dead, and that was something that this is back in the day, but yeah, like tape trading, like that kind of thing.
Because this is kind of like what you're doing now. You're basically continuing this
there is a
hobby
line.
or whatever, or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
The idea of like people used to trade tapes through the mail, and like people would put fucking ads in like Rolling Stone back in the day that said like, I have all this shit. Like, what do you have? Let's trade it.
And the way, I was discussing this with a buddy the other day, but back then on Aquarium Drunkard and lots of sites, the comment sections were really robust. So I would write about something, and then the comment section would be, 30, 50, 100 deep. And I would end up learning about things from the commenters who would be like, oh, you wrote about this, you should check out X, Y, and Z. Or they would leave a link to download it or whatnot. And because of social media, that is not the case anymore.
Explain that, because I'm confused. Because now I look at stuff and I don't see any comments on anything, except for like just at some point it's like fuck Obama.
There's no comments anymore.
Yeah, like it's just racist comments.
We can drop, one of the best entries ever on Aquarium Drunkard, and there'll be maybe 2 comments. And I think a lot of that conversation has moved to Twitter and Facebook or Instagram or whatever else, because you're also sharing that same content there, and that's where the discussion goes. But back then the comment sections were really robust, and it felt more kind of like a community, kind of like tape trading, or like in college I was a clerk at this record store, and you would have the constant customers that would come in, the repeat customers, and you'd have a dialogue with them about talking about records and stuff. And that's something that I really did enjoy. And I liked having that community on aquariumdrunkard.com proper. And now it has moved to Facebook or whatever, or Twitter, but it's harder to kind of keep up with it compared to back then, when it was all within the context of the post.
So do you have a way of sort of like judging, like you can keep track though of like who's looking at it, and like what's going on with it though, but it's just not as like much of a dialogue anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I can keep track of all the metrics and where people are coming in from around the world, but yeah, back then it was within the context of whatever the post, the comments section would turn into its own little universe, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. You mentioned working in a record store. What record store was it?
This was in Athens, Georgia.
Is that where you're from?
I'm from Atlanta, but I went to college in Athens. It was called Backtracks. It's gone now. It was downtown.
Huh.
There used to be a lot of record stores downtown in Athens, but
I've never been there.
To Athens?
Yeah.
Good town.
I've been
good
to
town.
I've heard. I know a lot of people from there, and
Yeah.
I've always heard it's like a really good music town. But
yeah, for sure.
So when did you get out to LA then?
2001.
Okay.
So
and why'd you come out here?
I grew up in the South, and just to
Change.
Yeah, you need to change, and this was pretty far away.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So and then what were you doing though for work and stuff before this?
My first gig out of college, I was working with this .com in Atlanta, and I was their music editor. And it's a company where the mechanics behind it actually ended up becoming Ask.com. Ask Jeeves, you remember that search engine? But
how could I forget?
Back then, we were doing something different. So that folded during the .com, just dust up in the early 2000s. Then I worked for AOL Digital City in Atlanta, and I was their music editor. And then I moved to California, and I was trying to find something else to do, and I was working in this totally different arena, like a more corporate thing, and figured out that was not for me. And when Aquarium Drunkard started in 2005, I just started doing like a lot of freelance work.
So at what point do you get to where you're like, okay, I'm now shifting from like posting stuff that I like to now I'm kind of running this as a business almost, and now I'm getting people pitching me shit from record labels, music, and things that they want me to put up there and promote?
Well, here's the thing. It's never changed.
It's never changed.
It's never changed. Like, I'm doing the exact same thing 10 years later that I was doing then. It's just the audience has grown.
Right. Because I was looking through it today just to bone up on it again.
Right.
and I was like, and I was noticing, I was just like, man, it does look exactly the same as when I looked at it the last time.
Right.
And so it's still just you. And you have another employee, or
we have contributors. It's a small handful of guys that.
Right.
But yeah, it's sure now we have access to we'll interview Merle Haggard or Chris Christopherson or Will Oldham or Jeff Bridges, but so those opportunities weren't there a decade ago, sure. But again, these are people that still fall in the orbit of kind of the spirit of AD, I guess. So
how do you guys collectively then decide like what's going to go up?
It all filters through me, but I trust all these guys, and they'll say, "Hey, I've got an idea for such and such," and we'll go back and forth. And again, I try to bring in all the people that have ended up contributing to Aquarium Drunkard, have become pals. And again, it's a very small stable of people that are doing this, but I try to find people that are better writers than me, better communicators, better interviewers, whatever, just to elevate, the quality of what we're doing.
Right.
Our tagline is only the good shit. So,
So you guys don't feel beholden then to like someone buys an ad on the blog or to write about the whatever press release you get. Like there's none of that sort of thing, because I feel like there seems to be just a lack of outlets out there for music journalism.
Right.
And what you do see is you see Pitchfork and you see Stereo Gum and you see Noisy and you see these places, and they're all kind of covering the same thing. If you look at like what they repost on Twitter or whatever, it's a lot of it's like the same stuff, because it's just these press releases that go out.
Right.
And so when those go out, you get the same stuff over and over and over again, And you think of the internet as this vast universe and that it should be wide open, but it seems like there's even less places now to like discover new music, because these places are also now like they're writing about like Drake and Kanye West and things like that
Right.
like if I had cable I could find out about it.
Yeah. You know, it's you know, it's great when Aquarium Drunkard happens to be in line with the zeitgeist and, you know, whatever's happening or trendy or whatever, but there have been many years when we have not. We just keep doing what we do, but you know, sometimes that stuff does fall in line with, you know, with our interest, but sometimes it doesn't.
Right. And so how do you have like, how do you pay for all this stuff to happen then? How do you get money to run the website? Is it through ads or is it?
Yeah, we have ads, but you know, I also have a million other jobs too.
We talked about that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. I do music supervision. I do, obviously, the Sirius radio show. We have the record label Autumn Tone.
Right.
And a host of other things. So it's, you know, we've talked about before. It's if you're working in music, you have to wear a lot of hats just to pay the bills.
I have a fucking podcast and a guitar.
There you go.
So do you want to talk about? I mean, we talked about it before we got on the air here, but I mean, it's like to do a radio show and to do a blog like Aquarium Drunkard and to run a record label and to do music supervision. Like that's like all of those used to be, well, before blogs, but you would consider that like a full-time job.
Right.
And you have 4 of them.
Right.
So when did the label start?
The first record we put out was in 2006. It was a dude named Daniel Hutchins, who's actually from Athens, Georgia. We were talking about earlier. I loved his band when I lived there in the 90s called Bloodkin, and this was his first solo record. And we're probably on our, I think we put out about 26 records now. We've got 4 coming out later this year. About 3 years after that, Scott Cimino came on board to the label. And it was just getting too big to, you know, handle this effectively by myself. So,
but you're pretty selective, like to put out 26 records in this amount of time.
Sure,
you're not trying
years.
to like meet fucking release dates or whatever.
No. I mean, it's the same, you know, thought that goes behind Aquarium Drunkard. Like we're only writing about, talking about, playing on the radio, stuff that we're genuinely interested in, and it goes the same for Autumn Tone. You know, we might put out 2 records a year. We might put out 6. It just depends. And like Aquarium Drunkard, it skews all genres. The width and breadth of it is you know, pretty deep.
Yeah, and you put out like the Orwells,
right?
And Twin Peaks.
Yeah,
which is kind of seems, as far as the roster of artists that you have, like sort of skews to a younger crowd or what. Like how did you find those guys? Like I know they're both from Chicago.
Yeah. I guess when it comes to new music, I guess I'm more drawn to garage and punk. And that Orwells, they had hit me up, I think it was 2011, and they were still in high school. They were sophomores and juniors, and they sent me this record they'd recorded in their basement. And I listened to it. I remember it was over the holidays and was just blown away. And we got in touch with them, ended up reissuing it properly. They'd put it on Bandcamp. When we took them to South by Southwest, and that just kind of, it really caught on. And then they ended up signing a different label deal with, they're on Atlantic now. Twin Peaks, I met through the Orwells, and we ended up doing their debut probably a year after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Orwells how did they find you?
They're Matt, who's the guitarist, his brother is Eddie O'Keefe, who's a filmmaker here in L.A.
Okay.
And he knew Aquarium Drunkard. And he, I guess, told his brother, hey, you should reach out, you know, to X, Y, and Z publications and try to see if you can get some press going behind your record.
I remember we played, my band played one of your showcases in New York at CMJ.
Yeah, the CMJ.
We opened for a young Courtney Barnett.
Yep, yeah. That was her first American gig, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we played Courtney Barnett's first American gig. It's funny because you know, I see her all around all the time now, and I'm trying to get my shit taken down off the internet. But no, I remember. It's funny. I remember that show, and I remember that there wasn't any drums, and we were scrambling trying to figure out drums. And then she played, and I was like, and she was very sweet, and her whole band was super nice. I don't know if it's the same band now that she has or not, or what she does.
I think it might be a different outfit behind her now. Yeah.
Nice Australian guys, nonetheless. And she played, and I just remember thinking, like, oh, man, this girl's going to be huge. Like, as not necessarily, like, my type of music, but you could tell, like, wow, this person's going to be, like, pretty big.
Yeah.
You know, just the way she was, you know. And then I got an email from Stephen Brower just sort of telling me about how he was starting the Easy Sound record. I was like, oh, you got to sign this Courtney Barnett girl.
Right.
Just saw her. She's going to be huge.
Yeah, because we had booked her for that Aquarium Drunkard CMJ showcase just based on those 2 self-released EPs that she had put out.
Right.
That I didn't know anything else about her. We had her on at it was 7. She was the 7 o'clock slot at the beginning of the night.
Right.
Because in the bands that we had on there, she was the most unknown. So here we are, 2-3 years later, and
yeah, I know, and it was
her thing.
Yeah, it was crazy because we were like, wow, I can't believe. I mean, she's amazing, but I was like, I can't believe we're playing this show it was just such a weird. But it ended up being like your show at CMJ probably was like outside. We played like a Death by Audio show that was like a bunch of like punk rockers and was rad and killer, and the basement flooded and everyone had to leave, and that was great. But like your show was like kind of the most fun in a way because it was like the most like diverse, and everyone was really fucking different and really weird but really good, which is I feel like is part of what the blog is about, you know?
Sure.
It's just like there's no real I don't know what I'm trying to say here. It's not. You said it best earlier. You said there's no like. It's just good shit. It doesn't really matter if it's like heavy metal or punk or like folk or like weird calypso music or wherever it's from or whatever it is. As long as it's impactful somehow.
Yeah, and if I had to, think about any kind of whatever influenced me to look at music that way, I guess it would be, early '90s. College radio back then, it was freeform. You'd hear the guy go from Fugazi into Ornette Coleman,
right?
And I don't know if that's so much the case anymore.
Did you ever do college radio?
I never did. No.
I did it at a like a trade school when I was in high school.
Nice.
And the rules were they had come up with some rule that like you could only play alternative music.
Okay.
That was the deal. Like you couldn't play anything but alternative music.
Right.
So no heavy metal, no punk, no classic rock.
Right.
Alternative music.
So I'm just curious, what fell into that descriptor back then? Everything from like the Smashing Pumpkins to Pavement and Jesus Lizard?
I think those would have all counted as alternative music. I remember I played an Alice Cooper song one time and they got mad because it was not considered alternative music. I think I played I'm 18 and it was all run on carts, like 8-tracks. Back in the day you used to stick these like carts in the thing, and they were not happy with Alice Cooper. It wasn't considered alternative.
It wasn't cool, man.
I don't even think it was. I don't even think it was cool. It was that this. It was a really small town,
right?
And it's a trade school, so it's like there's a guy down the hall like chopping his hand off with a bandsaw or something,
right.
And I'm over here like listening to Alice Cooper, and I'm like 15 or whatever. And I think what they had done was they had convinced the parents of the community that like heavy metal maybe is a little too much or whatever, like there's curse words or whatever. But if you like alternative music, if you listen to like a Smashing Pumpkins song, you're not there's no Satan in there. Like it's like a lot of distortion and reverb, and it sounds cool or whatever. But they're not putting like makeup on and like burning churches. You know what I mean? Like again, we're talking about. That's alternative.
Well, that was a time when Rolling Stone was running pieces about guys blowing their heads off the shotguns, listening to like an Ozzy record or whatever. So yeah, it's a very different
Deceivers,
different time back then.
Yeah, and it's funny how it's changed now, and now it's like there's nothing that's like gonna shock you and I if we, I mean, I don't know. You have kids, right?
Yeah, I've got Collier. He is 2.5.
And what do you like? What does he listen to?
He, man, his favorite song right now, he calls it the dun 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 song, which is Jefferson Airplane, White Rabbit.
Oh, that's
the bass line, the dun 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 dun. So that's his favorite jam right now. He really likes
that song's kind of scary though.
It is. It is. It's definitely got this kind of weird.
They use that song in every movie whenever someone takes drugs.
Yeah, Platoon, great example.
Exactly.
Yeah. He likes that. He likes. He really likes that Steam song. Na 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 hey hey hey.
Oh,
I don't know that.
Steam is the band.
The name of the band is Steam. Yeah.
I had no idea that was Steam.
Yeah. So those are his two favorite songs right now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Platoon thing. So you are also doing music supervision as another one of. You also had a Stetson hat, but this is another hat that you wear.
Yes.
As a job.
Yes.
Can you talk about that, because that White Rabbit song is perfect in so many films? Can you talk about how when you're doing music supervision, you know, how much of your tastes and ideas play into that? Because we've done a segment on music supervision on the show before with Tiffany Anders. And you know what we kind of learn is that it's a lot of just paperwork and a lot of like
the clearance,
just trying to meet people's demands as opposed to like what you want it to be, which is like this creative, like I'm gonna fucking make people feel this certain way through the music of the film.
Well, you know, again, I've done 3 features. They've all been very different, and they've all been indies. So you know, you're in a sense handicapped by small budgets for the music when you're not working on these huge.
Well, that could be a good thing too, though.
Yeah, it has its there's definite checks and balances, but so yeah, it has to serve the scene, but then you also have to be able to afford the rights to these songs. So on the indie level, a lot of it is trying to find music that both works and you can afford, and calling in favors. Now on the commercial side, there's more of a budget, but then obviously that's a whole different bag.
Yeah, because they want something, I guess commercially, that they want something that is going to be immediate and recognizable, which is like why if there's a hamburger, there's like a George Thorogood. Sure,
but sometimes they can get. There was a great Southern Comfort commercial 2 summers ago. Do you remember this? It was the guy walking down the beach, and there was an Odetta song.
Oh no!
It was great. This music supervisor named Andrew Kahn did it, and it was one of those rare instances where you see this commercial, and you can tell that they put a lot of thought into the music, and it worked perfectly. So sometimes there are those nice magical moments where commerce and art meet.
Sure. And do you try to like sneak a bunch of stuff in there when you give someone like a grouping of songs? Do you try to sneak in like some ones that you really want? Like when you go to the store to buy condoms, but you like get like a Sprite and some other stuff too.
Yeah, offshoot it. No, I mean, because sometimes kind of those outlier songs that maybe they don't think they want, those will be some of the ones that it's like, oh, I didn't think this would work in this spot, but this is really interesting.
And so then you get hired to do music supervision. How did you start doing that? Did you start doing it through the blog? Like someone found you, or you?
Yeah, the blog, it's kind of a, I don't know.
It's a great resume to have.
I was about to say it's almost kind of a living, breathing resume. So, if you are a filmmaker or you work for an ad agency or whatnot, and you're looking for someone with the sensibility of Aquarium Drunkard, it kind of gives you an immediate reference point of what I can quote unquote bring to the table in that realm.
And because we talk about this on this show sometimes, a lot of times, just about people want to work in the music industry. Young people want to work in the music industry. That's a lot of people's dream job is until you work in the music industry. And what we kind of figured out is that you have to do certain things on your own these days, especially, like start a blog or start something that that means a lot to you that
Sure.
you care about, and then that way it's going to motivate you to continue to do it as opposed to like trying to start something to meet other people's demands. But it is such an interesting thing to think that, you know, you started this thing just to showcase music that you like, and then people are now coming to you to help them with their realizing their ideas. And is that the same way that happened with the radio show? Because you have a show on Sirius and
Right.
XM radio.
Oh man, I've been doing that 8.5 years now, which again, I've been thinking a lot about Aquarium Drunkard turning 10 this summer, and a decade. That's such a big chunk of time when you start thinking about it. But yeah, the radio show, they hit me up, a couple of years after the blog started and said, listen, we're going to have a small group of folks that are going to be doing these specialty shows, and it's going to kind of be based around people with blogs. And would you want to do one? And so, like, it'll be a 2-hour show. You can play whatever you want. And it's on the, the quote-unquote indie rock channel. It's Sirius XMU, but my producer, Rob Cross, is great. Like, he, there's no boundaries of, what I can or cannot play.
It's not just alternative music.
It's not just alt-rock. But yeah, again, that's something that came out of, starting this blog on a whim,
And so where do you record it at? Like, I know Sirius is obviously it's a satellite sort of thing, but do they have studios all over? Like, because you're here in LA.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just doing it out of Echo Park, but yeah, they, they're based in New York City, and then when XM and Sirius merged several years ago, so they still have a campus in DC. But yeah, for the stuff that we're doing, or these specialty shows, we're recording them on our own, and obviously, with technology today, that just involves a USB mic into a MacBook.
Sure, what we're doing right now, basically.
Sure.
But and you don't have any sort of guidelines for that show. You just bring in whatever you want that week.
Yeah, so like it's on today. Like
right.
Today there was a lot of post-punk, old new wave. I mean, it kind of skewed that way. Whereas the week before it was, like a lot of kind of outsider blues and gospel and private press funk music from the 70s. So it really just depends on, like you, whatever you feel like listening to that day. That's kind of what the radio show, if I was to say there's a guideline, it's just what I happen to be listening to that week and what I want to spend 2 hours putting essentially a mixtape together for.
Crazy. And just winding down here, because we talked about this at the beginning, and now you're also working with Mark Mothersbaugh.
Right.
Doing in what capacity?
So Mark started about 20 years ago a company called Mutato.
Sure.
And this is his company of composers. He does the Wes Anderson films. He does all of that kind of stuff. But they also do branded stuff for commercials. So they've brought me in as the Mutato music supervisor in terms of doing the music supervision when they're using licensed songs. So we partnered in January.
And so, is it like an office situation? You go in there and
no, they're over in Hollywood, but it's just something where we will meet, but I don't have to go in there and clock in.
You have to punch in and sit around at a
right.
table with everybody.
Right.
Well, shit. I mean, it's crazy to talk to you because to think about all of doing all these different things at once, and then you're also just. You're putting on shows. You want to talk about, I think when this show goes up, it'll be next Tuesday, most likely. And you have on August 1st, the 10-year anniversary
right.
for the Aquarium Drunkard.
Yeah, that's going to be August 1st at the Terragram Ballroom, which is that new room downtown.
Right.
It's Alalaz.
Did you go to that television show was there?
No, I was in Mexico. I heard it was fantastic, yeah.
I didn't go either. From what I heard, though, people said that it sounded amazing in there. And that they have a really good sound
the room's great.
Yeah, you've been there then.
I have, yeah. It's it was the guys that started the Music Hall of Williamsburg, Bowery Ballroom, and Mercury Lounge in New York. So it's the same group. This is their first LA room.
Gotcha. And so you've worked with them before because that's where we played that showcase.
Yeah,
was the Mercury.
We've done
Lounge.
a lot of stuff in New York with them over the years.
Right. So what's tell us about it? I cut you off there, but tell us about the 10th anniversary
Yeah, it's going to be the Alalaz, the Tide, and this new band called Drug Cabin.
That's Nate from Pretty Girls Makes Graves.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And it's when? August 1st?
It's going to be Saturday, August 1st.
All right.
Oh.
Cool. Well, can just people go to it? Can they get tickets online?
Buy a ticket.
Buy a ticket?
Yeah, I think there's about 50 tickets left.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so go buy a ticket on aquariumdrunkard.com
Yep.
to go to the 10th anniversary show. I mean, I think that's it. Is there anything else that you want to hit me to, since that's what you do?
Just my hat.
I like the hat. He has a really nice Stetson hat.
The Open Road.
That's the brand of the hat?
It's just...
Or that's the model?
That's just they call it, yeah. It's a good hat.
It's a good hat. Well, thanks, Justin.
You bet, man. It was fun.
Thanks for coming in.
Cheers.
Bye. All right, that was Justin Gage. Be sure to head over to www.aquariumdrunkard.com. Check out his blog. Tons of, I mean, the wealth of music on there is mind-boggling and has been for 10 years now, which he's celebrating. So go over there. If you're in LA, check it out. Go to the show. August 1st, Terragram Ballroom, A La La's, Drug Cabin, and the Tide are playing. Like you said, there's only 50 tickets left. By the time you hear this, there will probably be 0 tickets left. But I can't do anything about that, man. That's just the magic of radio. And that's the magic of you people for listening. Thank you so much. I'm Jed, not Banger. I'll see you next week. Peace. As always, I always forget this part. We're brought to you by Green Street. We're recorded here in downtown, beautiful Los Angeles. I guess it's not downtown, it's Mid-Wilshire, whatever you want to call it. Green Street. We're at the what's it? This is not a pipe. That's who funds us. Jessica Hunley is the producer. Nicholas Fahey is the engineer. What's that? Huh? Anyways, you guys know the deal. We'll see you next time.